Chapter 109, A Night of Passion. The following morning, Akio was leaving the guest room when the little tyke saw him, and shouted, "Papa!" Akio happily rushed, lifted him, throwing him slightly into the air, and hugged Hyung-sik. "Wow, you have grown so fast! I missed my little Hyung-sik." He was all smiles. "Papa, let us play." Hyung-sik pulled Akio's fingers toward the lawn, picked up the ball, and threw it to him. Both were happily playing when Hyun-ki arrived. He got surprised that Akio's playing with his son. "You're so early, Akio. Don't tell me you persuaded Riel to return to your company." A dry smile shone on Hyun-ki's face. "No, I missed this little tyke, so I came. I was also curious about Riel's immediate resignation. Maybe because of your persistence," Akio entreated. "No, it was her decision, and I am glad to assist her in managing her new position. That was formerly mine," Hyun-ki replied. A little while longer, Riel descended, all dressed up. "You're so early, Hyun. Let us have breakfast before we leave." Then Riel turned to Hyung-sik's nanny. "Has my baby had breakfast already? See to it that you packed everything for his stay in the office, Ruby." Akio and Hyun-ki joined Riel at the breakfast table. Both men were quiet, eyeing each other's moves. "Do you always come here for breakfast, Hyun?" Akio asked, to break the ice. "How about you, Akio? Do you do the same?" Hyun-ki returned Akio's question. "Not if I can help it," Akio replied. "So do I," was Hyun-ki's short reply. Hyun-ki put some bacon on Riel's plate, and simultaneously Akio did the same. Riel got plastered at the two men's action, so she removed the slices of bacon from her plate, and returned these to the two men. Akio and Hyun-ki stared at Riel, and with a smirked smile, she put down her fork, and folded her hands under her chin. "If you wish to have breakfast with me, you both have to behave, or I'll throw you both out of my house. Was I clear, gentlemen?" Both men became silent, and sipped their cups of coffee simultaneously. Then Juni came in and announced to Akio that his car had arrived. Hyun-ki stared at Akio suspiciously. "Didn't you bring your car in coming here?" "Nope. I asked my driver to just drop me off." "Is there something wrong with that?" Riel's face flushed, and her eyes shifted to both men, feeling uneasy. "You're so in haste in getting here. Why was that?" "Akio," he replied irritably. "Look, Mr. Han." Hyun-ki, "For your information, I just arrived from my out-of-town fieldwork, and I wanted to know why Riel suddenly resigned." "Don't I have the right to know?" Akio looked at Hyun-ki sternly. "So now that you know, this would be your last breakfast here, since Riel has nothing to do with your company now, and note that she is now a shareholder in the two big companies in this city, so there's no need to bother her." "Put that to your clear head," Hyun reiterated. "I hear you, Mr. Han. But don't forget, I still have the right to see my godson, and I have the reason to see Riel, unless she says otherwise, so you don't have to be angry or frustrated if you see me more often," Akio stated. Hyun-ki and Akio showed an intense rivalry for Riel's attention. Riel heard a loud sound ringing in her ears, and she shouted in annoyance, "Will both of you stop this bickering nonsense? You must have forgotten that this is my house, and I have the full right on who can and could not enter my house. Both of you were gentlemen enough to get welcomed here, but if you went here only to quarrel, I have to give you restraints." Both men consented, and both apologized for their rudeness. Akio decided to leave, and gave Riel a peck on the cheek, which astounded Hyun-ki. With furrowed brows, he was thinking suspiciously about Akio and Riel. "Was there something going on between the two of you that I don't know?" asked Hyun-ki suspiciously. "What, is something bothering you, Hyun?" Riel asked plainly. "Riel, we are legally separated but still married until annulled. Where is this going?" "Hyun," she replied blankly. "What I am trying to imply is that I want us to work things out again, fix our marriage, for our son's sake." Riel kept her silence, and then seconds later, she stood and called for Ruby to bring Hyung-sik. "Shall we go, Hyun? Let us make this day productive. Let us spare this moment graciously. Don't you think so?" Hyun nodded with furrowed brows. "You still have to consider what I said, Riel. Let us talk about this some other time, please." Riel stared at Hyun-ki, and then nodded without a word. It is the night of Riel and Akio's formal date. Riel was home early, and she spent some time with her son, fed him dinner, and gave him a soft bath. And while giving him a lullaby, she was staring at Hyung-sik, as if beads of tears welled in her eyes. She could not forget that day, when her water broke during her 8th-month pregnancy. She has no one to rely on, for Hyun-ki left her without a word to be with Rosemary, and in the hospital, she was fighting for her and her son's life. She already accepted her fate, that the doctor has to save her son, instead of her life. No one could ever reach or find Hyen-ki while she and her son were struggling for their life. Riel felt her chest so heavy that she cried and embraced her son tight. She whispered, "Thank God you were born, despite the risk we took together, my son," and she continued to swing her son to sleep until her tears dried, but she was still sniffling. When Hyun-sik was in a deep sleep, Riel laid him on his bed, kissed him lovingly, and whispered goodnight. Riel went to her bedroom and prepared for her first formal date with Akio. She felt her heart beating with excitement, and her stomach fluttering. She had never had this feeling for the longest time, and all she could think about now was the tingle creeping into her veins. Riel felt that she had to be beautiful and alluring for Akio. At last, she thought, from being close friends for almost 2 years, they had now become lovers. A few moments later, a knock came on Riel's door. "Ma'am Riel, Sir Akio is already here." Riel flinched. "Yes, I'll be right there." She heaved for air twice, feeling nervous. Riel was descending down the stairs, while Akio was lovingly staring at her, waiting for her. Akio got dumbfounded at the beauty Riel exuded that evening. He reached Riel's hand to assist her as she descended the stairs, and gave her a gold bracelet he put around her wrist, and it suited her elegance. Then Akio took a box from his chest pocket and let Riel open it. She got astounded. As he placed the necklace around her, Akio whispered, "You are not only a hot mama, but an attractive woman, my dear." Riel smiled sweetly, so flattered. Then Riel turned to Hyung-sik's nanny, Ruby, and said, "I'm leaving my son to your care, Ruby. See to it that he's dry in his sleep." Akio brought Riel to a plush hotel, and had a sumptuous expensive dinner and wine, and as the music from the orchestra was playing, Akio offered Riel a dance, and brought her to the center. Akio held her waist as the romantic saxophone played to the tune of "Perfect." As the song continues, Akio had her closer, their faces get closer, and their eyes meet. Akio whispered, "I want us to be alone, away from this crowd. Are you with me, Riel?" She smiled and nodded. Akio released her, clutched her hand, and walked briskly to the lift. Akio brought Riel to a suite facing the sea, and Riel was amazed. She ran to the balcony, and heaved a deep breath, smelling the ocean breeze, and feeling the cold gust of wind touching her skin. Akio came from behind, and embraced her, his chin leaning on her shoulder. "Do you like it?" Akio asked gently to her ears. Riel turned her body to Akio, and with their faces closed, Akio pressed his lips gently to Riel's. They kissed passionately, notwithstanding the cold breeze enwrapped around their being. Then Akio carried her, and brought her down before the bed. He gently brushed his fingers on Riel's hair, and carefully removed her earrings and necklace. Then Akio removed his coat and wristwatch, and laid beside Riel. Full of fire and passion, Akio opened her mouth gently with his tongue, and dived between Riel's lips in a playful and intimate move. His hands groped into her silken hair, and pulled her mouth down against his, tasting her lips like honey. Akio pins her hands, gently sliding his mouth down to her chin and neck, continuing his kisses to her chest. He put his thighs between her hips, and carefully pulled down her dress. He wanted her supple body against him. His desire rushed inside him. Riel had now succumbed to his strength. Sliding his hand over her hip, he drew the lace away as he lifted her hip to let him. There was nothing between them now. The touch of his hands, so warm on her bare skin, all Riel could feel was his touch. All she knew was the heat that moved through hers. Her body seemed to melt against his. He could feel her, the fullness of her against him. He groaned as her skin heated at his touch. It had been such a long time that Riel craved to be touched. He pulled her against him. He tightened his hands, and sent another burst of heat straight to Riel's core. They moaned and groaned in satisfaction. Their breathing heaved deeper until their last sigh. It was 3 o'clock when the lovers thought of leaving the hotel. And before leaving, Akio pinned Riel by the wall, and kissed her again. "I love you so much, Riel. And I would like to have you as my wife. And you know, as well, that Hyung-sik was like a son to me." Riel touched Akio's face assuringly, then replied, "I love you, Akio. How can Hyen-ki accept the truth once he knows Riel and Akio are in love?"